So let's shift gears again. I want to talk specifically about Ultima Online, because it's, I mean, the Ultima series, the pioneering role-playing series, they've all been enormously successful and they're revered. But Ultima Online, particularly, is 1997, if memory serves correctly, changed everything. And there was another game. There was a game called Meridian 59, which there had been things called for
MUDs.
All of us old guys. I remember them well as too. Multi-user dungeons, MUDs, but those were mostly text-based, right? And so it's Ultima Online, along with this other one, Meridian 59, were kind of the first real big deal graphical, massively multiplayer online games. But you're telling me that before we came in here, EA didn't even really want you to make the game.
Yeah,
your publisher, your /owner at the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so here's how that sort of happened. So even early in Ultimas, even before Ultimas, if you go back to teletypes, there were multiplayer games on teletypes. I mean, as long as people have had computers, and especially when they had acoustic modems, which is how most of them started, was a teletype with an acoustic modem to a central computer somewhere, people have been making these multiplayer games, and including multiplayer dungeons or role-playing games. So the concept was by no means new to the world or even to us as game designers, me and my team. And so we had always wanted to make what we used to our pen name for it was Multima, Multiplayer Ultima. And every year we'd think about making Multima. But every year we'd look at the market and we decided it was not time. We really couldn't do it. And the reason why we'd say we couldn't do it, it was not technical, it was a market reason. We sat back and said, look, there were already these games on that Genie and Kesmai was making for Genie and AOL. A lot of these, probably the biggest of that period would probably be like Air Warriors. And these were games where people, when they were playing them, were still paying, often as not by the minute, for connection time. So they're very expensive to play, and therefore, and had very low bandwidth. And so the combination of low performance, high cost meant you really couldn't do much of a game. And so I couldn't do a frontline Ultima with that kind of market and technical restriction.
Yeah.
But then we saw the internet starting to happen. And it was Starlong and myself who were looking at this saying, now's the time. This is the moment where access to the internet is going to become ubiquitous. Machine power is now strong enough. There will be a market for it. Let's go make Multima. And the way EA probably still does, or at least they did at the time, greenlights a game, is they have twice a year or so these sessions where anybody who wants to kick off a new game can come and pitch it. And that pitch means put together a proposal. That proposal not only describes the game, it describes what technology is needed, it describes what marketing you want for it. You hand that to a sales department who gives you an estimate of the lifetime sales. Mm-hmm. If those lifetime sales justify the expense in the game, then sure, let's greenlight it. But the way they determine that is with comparables. Well, there are no comparables.
There are none, yeah.
There's none. And the closest comparables are things like that have been working on these dial-up bulletin board services, which have had a maximum of about 5,000 users. And the largest sales of anything they could even find out there to kind of rationalize a comparison with, they said, look, it might have like 15,000 sales. And let's suppose because it's Ultima, we double that. We'll give you 30,000 sales. Well, 30,000 doesn't justify any amount of investment in product development from the EA standpoint. So they were like, no, you can't do it. So we went home, hat in hand, going like, well, we think they're wrong. We came back 6 months later. It's more obvious the internet's a thing. We say, that game we talked about last year? We're here to tell you again this year. The data is proving the internet's a thing. You should really let us go do this. Second time, thank you, no, we're not interested. We come back a third time, and this is now 1 year later.
It's probably maybe 94, 95 at this point, I guess.
Something like that. And we come back for the third time, and for the third time we're told no. But then I actually stop, and I literally say, and Larry Probst was president of EA at the time, and I said, Larry, we at Origin, we're spending 5 or 10 million making the next Ultima, 5 or 10 making the next Wing Commander, 5 or 10 making these 3 other games. You're just wrong on this. You need to give me $250,000 to prove this. Please, and I took a piece of paper and I said, this gives Richard Garriott the right to go over budget within his development team by $250,000 to prove this Ultima Online thing. I said, just give me $250,000. And he was like, okay. Signed the piece of paper, sent me away. And so that's how we started the product. And when we started it, it was also funny to see what happened development-wise, because whenever a new employee potentially came in the door, all the teams that might want them would fight over them. And so, like if it was a super hot programmer or artist, this was the time when Wing Commander was our best-selling game.
Yeah.
So Wing Commander usually could find an excuse why they really needed that person. Well, the bottom of the heap was Ultima Online. And so Ultima Online was only allowed to hire people who were real specialists. Like if we hired a multi-user dungeon builder, the other teams didn't care, so we could get those people. But it also meant all the best office space went to other teams. All the obviously hotshot programmers and artists went to other teams. So we sat down and developed this little, okay, we are Ultima Online, man. We're going to make this thing happen by hook or by crook. And we spent our $250,000 and basically got to a playable demo. And then realized we had a new problem, which was how do we get people to see it? Because the internet was still so slow, you couldn't download it. It was too big to download. Which means if anybody wanted to help us test it or prove it, we had to send them a CD, which cost $5 to just manufacture and mail it. And so we thought, well, what are we going to do now? And so we actually put up what was basically, and I think it might have actually been EA's first website, but if it wasn't the literal first, it was basically amongst the first. And it basically was, hey everybody, we're the Ultima Online team. We're creating this Ultima Online thing. How would you like to come help us beta test it? But you have to pay us $5 for the privilege of beta testing it.
I did.
Because we need to send
I remember getting
CDs.
my disc in the mail.
Well, that first website, within its first weeks or month, I don't remember what the period of time was, 50,000 people signed up to pay us $5 to get that CD.
And they were generously giving you $30,000 as an estimate of.
As an estimate for lifetime.
Yeah,
lifetime. And so immediately, that moment, that day, was the day that the world changed around Origin EA, and especially for Ultima Online. It went from being the bastard stepchild that no one in the company wanted, period. It was only happening because Richard Garriott was a jerk enough to stand up and stomp his feet and hold his breath until they let him do it. And now suddenly became the most important thing happening in EA worldwide. Not only did the money coffers open, but frankly, then all these managers from EA transplanted themselves to Origin to help out, and
sycophants lining up to.
So it actually, we had the opposite problem. Now it was like, thank you for your help, but please stay away. But obviously when it did ship, when it shipped, whatever time amount it was later, it became the fastest selling PC game in Origin and EA history for that moment in time.